We are witnessing a total financial meltdown in Tehran today, as the Ayatollah's strict lockdown policies have plunged the nation into a catastrophic economic depression. The Iranian people have effectively voted no confidence in the regime, and this spreading financial panic has rapidly escalated into an existential threat for the leadership. Citizens are rushing to liquidate their accounts, withdrawing cash at record-breaking speeds, which has forced the government to slam down severe draconian capital controls to stop the bleeding. This is starting to look a lot like the Iranian Revolution 2.0 because the moment a population loses faith in its banking institutions, they lose faith in the nation itself. And if we look at the history books, this kind of economic spiral is the textbook signal for how dictatorships eventually crumble and fall. Just last night, reports surfaced that Bank Melli, the largest state-owned bank in Iran, has effectively locked its doors and suspended all cash withdrawals, following a chaotic run on the bank amidst the protests. This move signals a level of financial instability that we haven't seen in decades, and points to a total collapse of confidence in the nation's banking infrastructure. It is simple that people do not trust the government to safeguard their life savings anymore, so they are desperate to get their cash out while it is still worth something. Meanwhile, the government is scrambling, trying to deny the crisis, but we need to rewind the tape a bit to really understand how the situation deteriorated this quickly. Make no mistake, these protests did not ignite over abstract politics. They started because the average Iranian family could simply no longer afford the basic cost of staying alive. We are talking about hyperinflation, where prices were jumping 10 to 20% every single month, not annually, but monthly, with staples like rice, eggs, cooking oil, and medicine becoming luxuries while wages remained stagnant. The average working-class Iranian was watching their quality of life evaporate in real time with absolutely zero hope on the horizon for things to get better. And instead of fixing it, the regime decided to pour gasoline on the fire, making the situation infinitely worse. Just look at their policy decisions. They deliberately devalued their own currency, the Iranian rial, tanking it on purpose. Which begs the obvious question, why would they do that? Why in the world would a government intentionally incinerate the value of its own money? Well, the answer leads us right back to the corrupt ruling class, the wealthy elites who hold the keys to the regime. They rake in cash through oil exports sold in US dollars. So when they crash the rial, every single dollar they bring in suddenly buys them twice as much local currency. Let me break that down for you. Before they tanked the currency, a dollar might have gotten them 700,000 rials, but afterward that same dollar is worth 14 million rials. Essentially, the regime managed to multiply their domestic spending power massively practically overnight. So the mullahs got wealthier, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps got wealthier, and everyone connected to the oil pipeline filled their pockets. But the average Iranian citizen, they got completely crushed because every basic necessity rice, wheat, medicine, clothing is imported from outside the country. Now it costs astronomically more to import those goods, meaning the price tag on the shelf skyrockets, rendering people's life savings worthless, just so the regime could pad their accounts. This isn't legitimate economic policy, folks. This is straight-up theft. And what makes it even more sickening is where that extra cash is going. That money isn't going back to the people. It is being funneled directly to Hezbollah, to Hamas, and to the Houthis. Iranian families are literally going hungry just so the Ayatollah can finance his proxy wars and terror networks across the entire Middle East. You walk into stores in Iran and the shelves are fully stocked, but it is a ghost town because nobody can afford to buy a single thing during this historic economic collapse. The consumers are completely tapped out. The cash just isn't there. A single bottle of cooking oil that used to cost 790,000 rials has jumped to over 1,850,000 rials. And the government has already warned that prices on other staples are set to surge by another 50 to 100%, with service costs following right behind them. This inflation is creating a ripple effect that is tearing through every single sector of daily life. That is why we saw crowds hit the streets late last month when the rial went into free fall, hitting 14 million against the US dollar. With inflation raging out of control, the currency lost a staggering 60% of its value against the dollar over the course of the summer alone. While the regime threatens severe consequences for anyone daring to protest behind the scenes, authorities are desperately scrambling to stop the bleeding. They recently tried to stabilize the collapse by pulling the plug on the subsidized exchange rate for importers. That subsidy was supposed to keep essential goods affordable, but now they are shifting strategies to pay cash handouts directly to citizens instead. Their spin is that they haven't cut the subsidies, but rather they have started depositing the funds directly into everyone's bank accounts. As if that solves the problem. You're welcome, right? The payout amounts to roughly $7 US, which might get you 100 eggs and maybe a few pounds of rice or chicken at current market rates. While that might offer a temporary lifeline to the absolute poorest economists warn this policy shift is only going to drive inflation even higher. It seems they realized they lost control of the inflation monster, so their Hail Mary play was to hand out 1 million tomans to the people to try and dampen the public outrage. But let's be honest, that is just a temporary painkiller for a fatal wound. You just have to look at the staggering price tags. In just the first 10 days of the year 2026, the price of cooking oil shot up by 133%. That is more than doubling in less than 2 weeks. Dairy is following suit. Chicken is up 70%, rice 30%, and red meat 16%. The government is openly admitting it is going to get worse. And if that is what they are willing to say on the record, imagine the horror story they are hiding behind closed doors. This is the exact reason the streets erupted on December 28th, and guess what happens next? The regime in Tehran initially thought they could control the narrative. Believe it or not, the government was actually comfortable allowing the public to vent their frustrations regarding the failing economy, thinking it would act as a pressure valve. They didn't just tolerate the dissent, they actually owned up to the failure. We have footage of the Iranian president going on record and publicly admitting that his administration completely dropped the ball. You need to listen closely to this because it is extremely rare for a leader in this region to speak this candidly. He is on tape saying, "I am the one responsible for the current situation." He explicitly states that the students, the civil servants, and the regular citizens are not to blame for this mess. He is taking the fall personally. He continues by saying, "The blame belongs to us. We are the ones who need to fix our performance." He's even going off script and telling the hardliners, if the people are angry, that is on us, not on the United States or any foreign actor. He is trying to pivot the entire national conversation right now. He is urging the establishment to stop hiding behind slogans and actually listen to what the public is screaming. The message is clear: stop looking for the great Satan or external enemies to scapegoat for our domestic incompetence. He insists we are the ones who must serve the public correctly so they are satisfied with our governance. He admits that resource mismanagement is the core issue and that the burden falls squarely on the administration to engineer a solution rather than making excuses. He asks rhetorically, the fault is mine, the fault is ours. Is it the fault of that student, that factory worker, that citizen? Absolutely not. He concludes that the people are innocent of this crisis, and therefore the government must completely overhaul how it operates. Now I have to take a quick pause to mention that the algorithms really hate this kind of unfiltered coverage on regime instability. These updates get suppressed. So if you want to help us keep reporting the truth, please hit that subscribe button down below. It makes a huge difference in keeping us on the air. But that government apology was too little too late. The crowd swelled and the chants shifted from fix the economy to death to the dictator. When the streets started calling for the end of Supreme Leader Khamenei, that crossed the ultimate red line. The Ayatollah could not let that slide. To crush the uprising, the regime pulled the plug. They ordered a total internet blackout, the standard tyrant playbook, to hide the crackdown and sever communications. However, in 2026, cutting the web has consequences they didn't calculate. When you kill the internet, you kill digital banking. Suddenly, millions of people couldn't access their accounts online and panic set in. When citizens can't swipe their debit cards or check their balances on an app, the immediate fear is that their money is gone. They don't know if their life savings are safe. This triggered an immediate stampede. Everyone rushed to the physical bank branches to withdraw every single cent they could get their hands on in hard cash. And this isn't just about the working class trying to buy bread. The terrifying part for the regime is that the whales are swimming away. We are seeing reports that the elite are liquidating millions. We are talking about the insiders, the people with security clearance who know exactly how close the collapse really is. They are draining their accounts and frantically wiring money out of the country. They are practically begging for visas to get into the European Union. Credible intelligence suggests that regime loyalists are looking for any exit strategy to escape the massive capital flight that is currently destroying the currency. We actually have the specific names of some of these high-profile defectors who are trying to jump ship. The family of the Speaker of Parliament has reportedly filed for French visas to flee Iran. This is the same man who was the architect of the sacrifice your son for the revolution doctrine during the brutal Iran-Iraq war in the 80s. This is the same hardliner who demanded that khamenei show no mercy to protesters. He called for the crushing of the student movements back in 1989, and now he is trying to secure a luxury retirement in the West. When the people running the system start preparing their emergency exit strategies that tells you everything you need to know about the stability of the government. Let's rewind the clock to 1979 because this exact scenario has played out before in Iran during the fall of the Shah. Back then, black gold was everything. 90% of the nation's export revenue came directly from crude oil sales. 60% of the entire government budget was funded by oil. The whole Iranian economy was a one-trick pony dependent on energy prices. That is why when the oil refinery workers went on strike during the revolution, it wasn't just a symbolic protest, it was a financial assassination. The Shah didn't just lose his political legitimacy, he went broke. The government physically could not function without that cash flow. The military stopped getting paid and loyalty disappears when the checks bounce. And what did the Iranian elite do back then? Exactly what they are doing right now. They pulled their fortunes out of Iranian banks and wired billions to London, Geneva, and New York. They saw the writing on the wall and ran for the hills. Sorry I had to make that joke, but the reality was incredibly grim for those left behind. Foreign banks froze, lines of credit corporations stopped making deposits, and the entire financial nervous system of the country seized up. Once the money stopped moving, the Shah was finished. There was no coming back from that. The Islamic Republic was born from a financial collapse, and it looks like they are going to die by one too. Here's the thing about bank runs that makes them so lethal. They are self-fulfilling prophecies. If the public believes a bank is going to fail, they rush to withdraw their cash. And because banks operate on fractional reserves when everyone withdraws at once, the bank actually does fail. It doesn't matter if the bank was healthy on paper yesterday, this is pure mass psychology at work. Fear creates the exact disaster that the people are afraid of. Once that death spiral begins, it is mathematically almost impossible to stop it. No government speech, no emergency declaration, and no amount of riot police can restore trust in a currency once that faith is shattered. When the financial system freezes, the entire regime freezes, and that is usually when the government falls. We are witnessing a total economic gridlock, where companies are physically unable to settle debts with their suppliers and employers are leaving their workforce empty-handed. But the most critical failure point, and the one that poses an existential threat to the Ayatollah, is that the military payroll is starting to bounce. Make no mistake, we have seen this exact catastrophic dynamic play out before. Specifically, we watched this scenario destroy Syria just last year. When the Assad regime finally ran out of cash to compensate the troops, those soldiers simply stopped fighting for him. The reality is that soldiers are not going to put their lives on the line for a paycheck that never arrives. The entire regime crumbled in a matter of days, not because the rebel forces were military juggernauts, but because the standing army lost their financial incentive to keep pulling the trigger. That is the absolute worst-case scenario, the very nightmare that keeps the Ayatollah pacing the floor in the middle of the night. You have to understand that Iranian security forces are not loyal to some abstract ideology. They are mercenaries for a system that pays them, empowers them, and allows them to run lucrative smuggling operations and live like kings. The second that system fails to deliver the cash and the perks, their allegiance is going to evaporate into thin air. This impending collapse is exactly why we are seeing regime forces driving around with loudspeakers practically begging citizens to return to business as usual. They are desperately pleading with business owners to unlock their doors and reopen the bazaars, essentially trying to force the shops back into operation. Just listen to the sheer desperation in this official announcement. In order to prop up the cause of the Islamic Revolution, we are demanding that all shopkeepers and business owners reopen the bazaar at the earliest possible opportunity. By doing so, they claim it will crush the hopes of the revolution's enemies and transform their optimism into total despair. But guess who else has studied the history books and knows the lessons of the revolution of 1979 inside and out? Reza Pahlavi, the son of the former Shah of Iran, has emerged as a major figurehead in this uprising sweeping the nation, and he is now issuing a direct call to action for everyone. He is mobilizing the protesters to physically flood the streets, seize control of the downtown districts, and effectively sever the regime's financial lifeline. I want to read you his exact statement because it outlines the strategy perfectly. He is going straight for the money because, as the old military doctrine goes, to win a war, you need three things: money, money, and more money. Listen closely to his decisive response and the directive he issued for the first wave of mobilization. I am confident that by making our presence in the streets more calculated and intentional, while simultaneously choking off the sources of funding, we will completely dismantle the Islamic Republic and bring down its worn-out, fragile apparatus of repression once and for all. With that in mind, I'm calling on all workers and employees in key economic sectors, specifically transportation, oil, gas, and energy, to launch a nationwide strike immediately. I'm also urging every single one of you to step out today and tomorrow to make your voices heard. On Saturday and Sunday, the 20th and 21st of January, starting at 6 o'clock in the evening, bring your flags, your national images, and your symbols. It is time to reclaim the public spaces as your own territory. Our objective has shifted. It is no longer just about disrupting traffic. The goal now is to prepare to seize the city centers and actually hold that ground. Now I want to pivot for a second and address a really important question that I noticed popping up in the comments section yesterday. A lot of people were asking, does the Islamic regime actually have any legitimate support left inside Iran? And unfortunately, the hard answer is yes. They do maintain some support, even if it is a very small sliver of the total population percentage-wise. But you have to remember the scale here. We're talking about 92 million people. So even if only 10% back the regime, that is still a massive number. That equals 9 million people. And to be clear, I am not stating as a fact that 10% of Iranians support the government. We do not have any verified data census numbers or reliable polling to give us a precise figure on that. But the point I'm trying to make is that even a small percentage of Iran supporting the regime is still a statistically significant force. Because we cannot forget that the government holds all the cards when it comes to force. They have the machine guns, the pistols, and the heavy machinery. And that monopoly on violence is exactly how they have managed to ruthlessly crush every single protest in the past. They possess the funding, the firepower, and the backing of a minority class that directly benefits from keeping the system alive. Only time will tell how this revolution plays out, but we will be right here tracking every single development on the channel. So please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss out.